We've got a beautiful day out today. I think maybe we're set for a little cooler than maybe we've had over the last couple of days. I don't think we're expected to have rain today. I thought maybe there might be a blip around 10 o'clock, so maybe we'll miss that here. But then the rest of the day, I think is supposed to be really nice. So thank you so much for coming and joining us, taking a good chunk of your Saturday morning here at the end of August. And for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet before, my name is Chaz, one of the co-founders of Noble, network of owners, business leaders, and entrepreneurs. And you are at our Money Matters. You're at the right place. Okay. You're at our Money Matters event, which actually it's an event over the last 2 years since we've really ramped up Noble that we've done the most. Okay, and there's a reason why we've done this event the most. In June of 21, Rob Kopp and I were over in Pittsburgh at Covenant Church of Pittsburgh, which is the church that planted this church, Oasis City Church. And we were there for a great conference, and I had the unbelievable opportunity to go before a very, very gifted prophetic named Pastor Eric Butler. And during that prophecy, he shared about the success of Noble. And he didn't know anything about it, right? We'd never talked to him about it, but he shared about the success of Noble and talked at that time how it would go national and international. And I know that I've mentioned this recently for those of you who've been on some of our online forums and whatnot, but now in the next few months, Noble is going national and is going international. So it's going beyond Central Ohio. So in October, yes, in October 14th and 15th, we will be going to Covenant Church of Pittsburgh and starting our Noble Academy, which is a program where we help over a 3-month period. We have a number of classes and we help people to start and grow their own businesses. And at the end of those 3 months, actually, you pitch to real investors and you get real startup dollars. Okay, we're going to be doing that. Then we're going to New Jersey, actually, where Pastor Eric Butler is from, and we're going to start Noble Academy and then Noble in his church in New Jersey. And then the third one possibly is Jamaica. So actually, national and international by the end of 24. So we're very excited about what Noble's been doing, and it's you, okay? It's you folks being here and, being and learning more about the kingdom and how we can contribute to the kingdom. And of course, Noble's biggest purpose is for you all to understand your purpose better and how to fulfill that purpose for the kingdom, okay? But one thing that Eric said during his message in June of 21 is that, hey, my people don't know how to handle money. And it wasn't an event that we were thinking. We listed a number of different topics and events that we would share during these kinds of events, okay? Money was not one of them, okay? And so he specifically said, he didn't mention any other particular type of topic, all right? He was, he knew that they were, we're going to be talking about all kinds of business-related things, right? But it wasn't on our radar to have a specific event on money. And he specifically said God's people don't know how to handle their money by and large. And we need then to be able to have programming to do that. And so that's where Money Matters came from. And so we're very happy that you're here. For whatever reason, I mean, it's great to see two students that are here get off on the right track and start handling your money young, okay, really, really well. And you're going to hear a story about how somebody that's pretty young, okay, and what they did to set up some pretty cool goals to go forward with that. But I then want to share a verse with you. Hopefully I didn't just lose it. Put your phone down for a little bit. Things always change on you, right? So I happen to be talking. Eric Butler's going to be in town in November because Noble's having a big retreat in November. And I happened to call him 2 days ago to talk to him about some things. And he shared 4 verses with me. And I wanted to share one with you today because it's very appropriate to what we're talking about. It's Micah 2:13. Micah 2:13. And this verse is called the breaker. It's called the breaker. Okay. And so what the verse says is the one who breaks open the way will go up before them. They will break through the gate and go out. Their king will pass through before them, the Lord at their head. Okay. Now, the imagery, and it's awesome. Whenever I've talked to a prophetic, and I don't know if anybody else in here has had the privilege to do that, and Eric is by far certainly one of the strongest that I've ever been before. What he was seeing in the presence of the Holy Spirit, what he was saying, he alluded to this. When was the last time maybe you were at a fair or something like that, and and they have this challenge where they got that big, tall kind of stand, and at the top there's a bell, okay, and you hold the big mallet, right, and you swing down and you hit that big pad right there, and the harder you hit it, obviously you want to hit it so that it hits that bell at the top, because that means you're a strong guy, right? And if you only go halfway, all right, you want to hit the bell, right? That was the vision he was having, all right, when he was sharing this verse with me, okay? And the reason why he was sharing this verse, and I'm being transparent here, is one of my business is kind of tied up in knots right now, okay? With some of its returns and receivables and things like that. It's kind of tied, and that's what he alluded to. It's tied up in knots, okay? And he saw a vision of this big mallet, and he likened it to the fair, coming down and smashing that and breaking up that knot, okay? And how I apply it today is our finances. Sometimes we've got old bills that, have risen, and we've got credit card debt and things that are going on, and it's got us knotted up. It's got us all knotted up, all right? And so he's seeing God with this mallet just coming down and busting up those knots, okay? And you're going to hear from two great people today. One that's kind of talking about the basics of finances and establishing a budget, which you've got to do, whether you're an individual working on individual finances, or if you're a business that's starting out or growing and business finances too. You've got to have a budget. You've got to understand what your numbers are, okay? Then you're going to hear more about maybe how you can start doing some investment of some money, and how you can start saving, and how that can mature over time and really start to build some wealth. But I wanted to share that verse with you because that's one of 4 verses that he shared that were very similar, and they're obviously very meaningful to what's going on. So in addition to that, in the back of the room, and I don't think we handed these out to you, but these are things that you can pick up on the way out. More information about Noble. We have 2 of these types of live on-site events every month, okay, here, okay? And then we have currently 2 forums that we also have. And I just wanted to announce 2 that Jeff Elder is now in charge and has taken ownership of our first 2 forum levels, which are knowledge and growth. And so thank you, Jeff, for doing that. So please give Jeff a hand for stepping up. We've got a lot of wonderful volunteers that help us with Noble, and with our growth, we need to start backfilling, okay, some of the things that we've traditionally done here as our team here, but our team now is going to be stretched. And so we're starting to fill some of those roles that we've been doing in a small group of us. But you can pick up one of these in the back on the way out. It just gives you more information about Noble. But besides being here at events and also our online forums, we also have a sign-up sheet that's on this back table, and this is for one-on-one. So Rob Kopp here in the back of the room, raise your hand, Rob. Rob Kopp and I, we meet with people one-on-one, okay? And how many of these have we done, Susie? Like 60, 70?
Yeah, so far this year, over 50. Over
50 just this year, okay, that we've met one-on-one with people. And it usually averages about 2.5 hours that we meet with somebody. And we dive in. And one of the things we talk about is finances. The other thing we talk about is is your relationships, your spouse, your family, those kind of things. If those two things aren't in order, you're not going to be able to succeed in having a business. Okay, so we dive into those first. Then we get into your business idea, your business where you're struggling. But this is a form in the back where you can sign up. Susie then will reach out to you and we'll get a chance to meet with you and talk about those things. And it doesn't just need to be one meeting. I mean, there have been folks that we've met with 4 or 5 times, okay, over a period of time. So please check that out in the back. But let's get to our speakers. So, told you earlier when first Rob and I in June of 21 went over to Pittsburgh, and we were told that okay, you gotta add money into what your offerings are with Noble. And so I'm riding the car on the way back with Rob, and I'm like, who am I going to go to? All right, that's going to come in and help us with these types of presentation. I mean, I know a lot of financial advisors and bankers and those kind of folks, and you know what? They're boring. They're boring. I'm sorry to say, I don't mean to offend any accountants or anybody else, but typically accountants and typically those topics are boring, okay? And the last thing we want to have is invite somebody to, invite people to boring events. So on the way back, I'm like, Rob, who can I get to come and share these kind of things? Well, I get back, and 2 weeks before that, I got an email from somebody. And this person who I've known for a long time just happened to contact me and say, hey, I know this young lady who's written a book not only for adults, but for youth, okay, on helping them with their finances. So I get back from this conference and I'm on my computer and I'm going through all the emails and I look at it, I'm like, no way. So I give Kayla a call. I didn't know Kayla. I give Kayla a call, start talking to her, and she tells me about what she's done. And I'm like, wow. Here's the answer to these prayers on the way back from this conference. And then, of course, the most important question at the end is, are you a person of kingdom? Are you a person of faith? Because that's a must. We can't put people in front of you that don't have those same basics. She says, of course I am. Okay. So yeah, Kayla has been part of this team who has come and done this, and she just has done a fantastic job. And I know you're going to be very excited to hear from her today, and then I'll introduce her tag team partner here in a little bit. But please welcome Kayla. Thank you.
Chaz, I want to thank you for a wonderful introduction, and thank you to Noble just for having me for another workshop. If you have attended one of these workshops, you know that I love presenting and I absolutely love talking about finances. And so today we're going to jump right into it. We're going to do a little bit of a different presentation. This is actually the first time that I will be presenting this particular workshop in person. I've actually done this online a few times, but it wasn't necessarily in person. So before we actually go ahead and jump into the 6 steps to a committed budget, I want to talk to you really quickly about what a committed budget is. By show of hands, how many of you have created a budget in your lifetime? Okay, just about everyone. How many of you were actually committed to that process? Like there was a commitment that you made to sticking to that budget and you saw it through. Where are our hands? Okay, still a few more. Well, I'm excited to see that. It's for those of you who had a little bit of trouble with sticking to that commitment, I would like to share with you 6 steps that you can take to tackle to tackle 2 of the most important things that a lot of us struggle with in our finances. Can anyone just throw out, what do you think those 2 are? We all have those 2 things in common. What do you think those are?
Spending.
Okay, that is one. So that's on the end of debt.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. What's on the other end of debt?
Saving.
There we go, saving. So saving more and paying off your debt faster. Those are the 2 commitments that I want to teach you to commit to through this 6-step process. So let's go ahead and move forward here. All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about myself so that you get to know me. I'm standing up here in front of this room, and of course, I'm going to teach you about these things, but what makes me qualified? Like, why am I even here? Well, this is a little bit about me. I'm not going to go through each of these lines here, but I'm just going to sort of hit the ones that were most important to me. My foundation in finance actually started with my grandfather. He taught me everything, like literally at the age of 5. He was from Andalusia, Alabama, and he was very country, and he would teach me about credit. That's how he pronounced it, and he would teach me about that. I had no idea what my name was, but I listened to everything it is that he taught me. And that led to me going to school for financial management, and I stuck with it. And it just became a passion of mine over time. My journey into entrepreneurship started with me starting an inspirational t-shirt company called Inspired by the T. And this t-shirt company was to inspire everyone, but to also to remind everyone about the love of Jesus Christ, because the shape of a t-shirt, or I'm sorry, the shape of the cross is the same as a small letter T, right? And so I was saying that you're inspired by my t-shirt, but you're also inspired by the cross as well. But to keep going here, as you can see, I love creating and I love educating. And over the few years, that's me in front of Noble, I also started a youth organization teaching them finances as well. So I just want to share this with you because I absolutely love talking finance and just encouraging everyone to be the greatest that you can be when it comes to managing your money, because it can happen. We can overcome our struggles, our debts, and we can see the financial horizon. So let's go ahead and move forward. And one of the first things I want to talk about is bottom line money management. So the bottom line is more so referred to as, let me actually, so skipping ahead, keep going here. So what is bottom line money management? Does anybody have an idea that you want to share as far as what you think bottom line money management is? Or what is the bottom line? Anyone? Yes.
The blank of an account, it tells you what's blank after all monthly expenses are accounted for.
You're smart. He's right. Technically, he's right. He just didn't, we didn't get to that part yet. So that's right. And you know what? I saw you guys over here, and I'm going to give you a candy coin, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, there you go. For you too, you're welcome. Adults, you can be candy coins too.
Participate.
Guys, ladies. All right, so what's your name?
Paul,
Paul, all right, so Paul already gave us a heads up in regards to what the definition of the bottom line is. The bottom line is the final total of an account, balance sheet, or any other financial document. Long story short, it's the final total, it's the bottom line. It's at the bottom, it's what you got to work with, right? And so when we're talking finances, the bottom line ultimately is what is left over. It's what's left over. And it also tells you how much you have overspent. That bottom line is negative, right? It also helps you to gauge how much you can, spend a little bit more. So your bottom line can tell you a lot of things. Bottom line money management, and what we're talking about here today is money management, actually managing our money. It's the continuous maintenance of what's left over after all of your expenditures. So managing your bottom line is ultimately paying attention to what you have left over after you've taken care of everything that is necessary. This is bottom line money management. And so what exactly, where did this definition come from? Bottom line, initially, actually, guys, what is that definition? Where did it come from? Well, the bottom line is actually a reference to entrepreneurship. It's for business finances. The bottom line, right? We got to make sure our bottom line is great, It's as far as our bottom line, that determines if you can pay your employees. It determines if you can buy more inventory, if you can reinvest into your company. Well, when it comes to your personal finances, it's sort of like the same thing. Your profit and your business is what you have left over to save more, maybe pay off a little bit more debt. And we always want to make sure, one, that our profit is going up. We also want to make sure that our income is going up. If we look at our personal finances the same way as we look at a business, although a lot of us may not have actually ran a business, but if we think about, let's think about like Kroger's. They are going to make sure that their bottom line is managed, correct? They've been around for so long. It's not something that's, they're gonna put to the side, they're just gonna, put it to the back burner, it'll happen later. It's happening now. They're taking care of their finances now. And so that company is gonna stay around. The economy makes sense. But when it comes to money management, it helps you to understand how you can fill your buckets. And if you are able to fill all of your buckets. Let's imagine that each bucket is a representation of your finances. So this is your budget. This is how much money you have. But it's important that we distinguish how much is going to each bucket. Instead of us just spending, we're just swiping our card, or today we're just tapping. That places us in a position of being completely unconscious when it comes to our finances if we're not going back and reviewing and looking at them. So as we move forward, there are 3 questions that I would like each of you to attack before getting into your bottom line. Now, the reason that I say attack these questions is because you're not just answering them, but you really want to think about the answers to these questions because it is going to mentally prepare you for having a successful, but next few months of budgeting, next few years of budgeting. So the first question is, how can money maintenance improve your life? How can actually paying attention to your finances? Maintenance. When we think about maintenance, we think about a maintenance man, right? In an apartment building or a school. When you see him, what is he doing?
Maintaining, fixing.
Something.
Yeah.
Right? He's always doing something. There is continuous maintenance that the maintenance man is doing. And so what does that continuous maintenance look like if you were to apply that in your life? If you were to increase your attention level from like a 5 to like 100, what would that look like? This is where we are creating the vision in our lives, in our mindset. Next is what would your life look like with regular money maintenance? I think I mix those 2 up, but you understand. How can money maintenance improve your life? And then more specifically, this is where we're getting specific as far as what does it look like? My car is paid off. I have an extra $300 or extra $500 each month. I'm able to give more to, some of the charities that I'm interested in. I'm able to support some of my local business owners and some of the local businesses. Be more specific in regards to what does that look like. The more specific you are, the more you're able to actually allow that to come into your life. And ultimately, the more specific you are, the more you're able to feed into the faith. Third question is, what are you willing to change to make this vision your reality? It's super important that we go through these 3 questions before we talk about budgeting, before we even get into budgeting. Because if you go into budgeting half-heartedly, you're not focused, you're not going to get anything out of it, right? Imagine going to church and you just have so many things on your mind and you literally just cannot focus on the message. You cannot receive the word. But if you go into church and you pray beforehand, you have a vision of what it is that you intend to receive that day. Your spirit is ready to receive. It's almost the same thing as doing these 3 questions here. Because you're setting yourself up, you're preparing the stage for what is to come. And ultimately, this is having the biggest impact on your mindset. And our mindset, I'll say this, our mindset is what gets us into a lot of the situations that we're in. Now, granted, life does happen. Life definitely happens to us. But I just want to remind us that our mindset has a lot to do with how resilient we can be in situations. All right, so as we are moving forward, I want to talk about a new money maintenance habit. So if you were to implement a new habit for budgeting, it would only be about 1 hour a week, right? And let's say you practice 1 hour every week for a total of 8 weeks. That only takes you 8 hours to build a new habit. Like out of 2 months, it takes 8 hours to build a new habit. 1 hour per week budgeting. This is actually what I used to do when I went through as far as achieving my financial goals. And if we have a moment, I'll stop and sort of share with you what that story is. But again, I ask you the question is, what are you willing to change to make this vision your reality? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It's one of my favorite quotes. Well, if you are not willing to actually change something, you're going to continue to see the same thing. Okay? So before we actually get into talking about these 6 steps of the budget, how can we make our bottom line management successful? Again, what is our bottom line management? I want to make sure that we are clear on this. What is our bottom line management? Anyone? Candy coins, come on.
The final total after what's left over, what we said before, or?
Yep, it's the final total. So the bottom line money management is basically managing your bottom line. It's managing what you have left over, managing that final total of your budget. Okay, I just want to make sure that we are clear on that so that there is no misunderstanding in regards to the bottom line money management.
Kayla, it's kind of like you're starting at the end and working your way backwards, you know, it's like you gotta get to that number to know where you're at.
Absolutely. It's all about that. It's all about that last number. And that's ultimately what it's sort of like reverse engineering, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I like to take that approach because if we look at what our income is, like the traditional, you look at what your income is and what you can take out of it. All right, that's great. But if we look at what we have left over, this puts us in the mind frame of, okay, I shouldn't be buying this because it doesn't work with my bottom line. I shouldn't be engaging in these activities because it's making my bottom line go into the negative, right? So it's looking at things from a different point of view. You're looking at what you have left over after you've already taken care of what is necessary. So as far as the bottom line management, keeping it success or making it successful, these are just a few tips for you to take to make sure that your budget is being prepared and planned properly. So some of the few thing is bookkeeping location. We have to have a local place where we keep all of our financial documents. If it's a binder, if it's a folder, but there has to be some organization in our financial lifestyle. Listing monthly expenses, that'll come into place when we do our budget. One of the big things that I think is really important on here is a calendar. Not sometimes, life always passes us by. Time is flying by, and sometimes we can get past due dates. When you pass due dates, especially for credit cards, Bill, it costs us money. And a few other things on there. Money date, we will review that. Insurance review your insurance. Make sure that you have all proper insurances that you would need. And also investments review. So these are some things that you can do before you actually start budgeting to make sure that this is a successful process for you. Now, as we keep going, I want to discuss with you 3 common types of budgeting. These are different ways for you to manage your personal bottom line. Now, these are the 3 most common types of ways of budgeting. One of them is my most favorite. I'm actually going to share that story with you once we get to that particular method. Bless you. All right, so our very first method that we're going to talk about is the 50-30-20 budgeting method. How many of you, by show of hands, really quick, have heard of the 50-30-20 method? Okay, about 4 of you. All right, cool. So there's some of you that have not. And so that's good. We're going to have some new information coming up here. So this method basically divides your total budget into 3 sections. The very first section is 50% of your needs. These are your the necessary things that you need in your life. 30% of your wants, bless you. We want to make sure that we're not depriving ourselves of the money that we're earning, right? We want to enjoy it to some extent. And 20% savings, because there is a future that we believe in that we want to save towards. Bless you, yeah. And so how do you apply this particular method? First, first off, you're gonna notice that a lot of these, how you apply the methods start out to be similar. First, you wanna calculate your income. Then you wanna categorize your past month's expenses. So you always wanna take a look at what your monthly expenses are. A lot of times people just grab a pen and paper and start writing down your monthly expenses. That's great, that's cool. All right, it works. But you miss things. Today's day and age, when we have all of the different subscriptions, you can apply every single month. What I suggest is for you to actually go back and look at your previous month's expenses. Go back and look at those transactions. Everything's digital these days, unless you're paying with cash. But go back and actually see what those expenses are and categorize them. Categorize them according to these 3 categories. Now, this method is going to require some math for you to make sure that you make the 50, 30, and 20%. And so just to clarify again, your necessary expenses are 50%. Your discretionary expenses should only be 30%. Discretionary means that you don't necessarily need these things, you just want them, right? So that happy hour with your friends where you actually, you got like 3 appetizers because you were just so excited. You got a couple fruity drinks. Yeah, let's just keep that under 30%, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and our savings and debt payment. So I want to bring attention to one thing here. For your savings, this actually focuses on savings, but I'm not going to deny that we have some debt. So you can actually divide this up between savings and debt, or, sort of balance it out as far as what your personal finances need. So just a couple pros and cons for this particular method. It is very simple for beginners. Like it's simple, 50, 30, 20, you got this 3 categories. It improves your money management skills simply by helping you to pay attention and be attentive to fitting your finances in those categories. And one of the things that I like about it most is it helps you to focus on saving and separating your money. Like your savings is completely separated from everything else. It has its own category. It's 1/3, essentially. Some of the cons about this is, like I said before, is actually budget, like doing those percentages and creating the 50, 30, 20 categories. If math wasn't your favorite subject in high school, then you are probably not going to enjoy this one. But I do want to encourage you that there are plenty of resources online available for you to do that. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so now this isn't going to work for everyone. And it's unrealistic for large debt holders. So if you have a lot of debt, I do not suggest for you to use this particular method, unless you completely replace the 20% savings with 20% debt to make sure that we're paying that debt off. By show of hands, how many of you like that method? Okay, all right. All right, so now we're going to the zero-based budget method. This method ultimately is sort of like with Rob told us how we're reverse engineering, where we're starting at the bottom. So this is where we're basing everything at 0. So for this particular method, we're just going to start out with how to apply it. First, you want to calculate your current income. You always want to start with your income because that's what's coming in. Then you want to review your past expenses. When reviewing your past expenses, you're going to subtract those expense amounts from your income. So all expenses, every single expense that you have to pay for, like even those 3 appetizers that you got because you were just really excited. And when doing so, I skipped a couple. In doing so, we want to make sure that your balance for your budget comes to a 0. The third thing is you're going to create a budget and set dollar limits. So you're ultimately going to set a limit for every single category. That's how you get to the 0. Everything, gas has a budget. Just random, dining out. Set a budget for that, $50. I'm only going to spend $50 on, fast food, dining out, just random, oh, I'm hungry, let me grab something quick, a bite to eat. Set a limit for that. And track your spending and review it often. So ultimately for this particular budgeting plan, it's definitely going to require your attention, but every single dollar you earn is assigned. It has an assignment before you actually receive those funds. So this is where, again, we are balancing and we are planning out every single dollar until we get to a zero. So when those funds come into our hands, every single dollar has a job. Has a job to do. And you are the manager instructed in making sure that each of those jobs are performed. So just really quick, go through here. Let's see here. I'm just gonna touch on just a couple of the pros and cons. For this one, I really love it because it's easy to see the full picture. You see everything. If you're budgeting down to zero, you see everything. Let's see here. It helps you gain control of every single dollar that's spent. On the other hand, little contradictory, right? It's difficult to account for every dollar. Like, let's be honest. I could say it all day. But it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's not a difficult thing to do. Just requires your time and attention. All right, so this is my favorite, my most favorite budgeting method, which is the cash envelope budget method. This is where you get a bunch of envelopes and you label them. And you stuff them with cash. Act as though those are your savings accounts. So you use envelopes as budgeting categories to manage your money with cash only. The purpose is basically to see, is to only use what you have budgeted for. So this is where I wanted to share with you my story really quickly. When I graduated college, let's see, it was 2015. I woke up one day, checked my credit score. I used to do this all the time. It was low, like it was low. It was low for me. I was like I really wanted to cry. It was in the low 500s. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just got my master's degree in business administration. I have a bachelor's in finance. I'm teaching finance. Everybody knows me to be like the money girl. Like, what's wrong with you, right? And so I decided to implement everything that I learned. I decided to go and learn more, to implement more. And when doing that, I set out a goal to save $10,000. It's like, I want to have $10,000 cash. I decided to make some sacrifices. A lot of times our ego and our pride gets in the way because we don't want to make sacrifices. But at that time, I decided to move back home with my parents. They're cool. I like them. I love them. They love me. They like me too. It's a difference when you like and love God. And so I decided to move back home and I budgeted. I sat down, and this is where the 5-Star Money Makers book came from. I focused on 5 different aspects of my finances. One was my goals, my cash flow, my credit, and asset protection, and credit debt restoration. And I accomplished that goal, you guys. I accomplished it within less than 2 years. I was able to save that $10,000. On top of that, I was able to pay off more than $6,000 in consumer debt. So ultimately, that was about more than $15,000 in a less than a 2-year time period, simply by budgeting and sticking to it. Also making some finances. And so I wanted to share that because I actually used this cash envelope method during that time. If I went to the grocery store, I would take my grocery envelope and my goal every single week, anytime I use this envelope, was to leave something in there. Because anything I left in the envelope, it went towards savings. And that helped me to reach that goal even faster. So I wanted to share that really quick story with you. There's so much more to it, but we gotta keep going. Yes. Oh, yeah, sure.
So what if so when you get the cash, do you revert it back like online, if you have to pay online?
Good question. Very good question. So there were some things that I did have to pay online. Bless you. Sort of like a gas bill and electric bill.
Right.
So I would make sure that I would budget those amounts and I would keep that exact amount inside of a separate checking account. So I would get a different checking account just to hold. It was sort of like my digital envelope, right? I would have a separate cash account just for those things that I had to pay electronically. There were times when I first started out, I was trying to figure out how to go about this. I withdrew everything in cash. You have to figure out what works for you. Starting out, I literally withdrew everything in cash and I would go in and pay it in cash just to keep me organized and, focused on the system that I had created. The pros and cons for this particular method: simple, it keeps you in control. I love this one. It prevents from you overspending. You're not gonna spend more than what's in that envelope. That's not happening. And it's risk of theft. Gotta be careful, guys. Gotta be careful where you keep your envelopes. Alrighty, so we're gonna move into our 6 steps to a committed budget. Now, as we go through this, I'm literally gonna walk through what these 6 steps are. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt and ask as we go along, okay? All right, so for our step 1 is to analyze your cash flow. So what does that mean? So we want to analyze your cash flow in 6 parts. Analyzing your cash flow is basically taking a look at how your cash is moving in your life. How does it flow in your life? How is it operate? First, you want to make a list of those monthly expenses. Then we're going to assign each expense to a budget category. You're going to review the last 30 to 60 days of past transactions. Remember I mentioned that? We're not just going to make a list of our expenses, but we need to go back and actually see what has been coming out, how our cash has been actually flowing. We assign each expense to a budget category. So each expense has a home. Every expense has a home that it belongs to so that you can monitor your budget categories. Ultimately, you want to calculate the total of each category. And the reason that we're doing this is so that we can determine our top 3 categories that we need to monitor. So, generally speaking, let's see here. Looking at the bottom here, we have some budgeting categories. You may need to monitor one of the categories that a lot of people have issues with. Looking at the budgeting categories, can anyone give me like an example of what do you think the budgeting category that most people struggle with?
Groceries, food, groceries.
Yeah. Yep. Groceries is good, but a better one?
Entertainment.
Yes, there it is. Entertainment, fun, and dining out. Absolutely. And so for our step 1, and I actually have something at the end on the back of your worksheet at the very top where it has start your easy digital committed budget today. There's a special offer on here, you guys. If you would like to indulge in that, you'll get 50% off. But it's a digital way for you to go through each of these 6 steps. And it also includes an Excel document to where you automatically just type in your numbers and it calculates these things for you. So I just wanted to share that with you instead of waiting all the way to the end so you can check that out. But for your first step, we're just going to make a list of our monthly expenses, figure out what monthly bills are we responsible for. Inside of that particular offer, you will have some worksheets where you can fill out your expenses, your due date, the amount, the balance. The second step to this, as we talked about before, is where you assign. So we've already written down what those expenses are. Now we need to assign each expense to one of these categories. These are general categories that pretty much everyone has in their finances. Some may be different for others. Now, for the part 3 is where you review your past 30 to 60 days of past transactions. I really encourage you to go take a look at your statements. You will have some surprises. I literally was just doing this yesterday. Yeah, it's crazy, honestly. I had 2 charges for Adobe on my card. Like 2 subscriptions, same thing. Yeah, got that taken care of. There were a few other subscriptions that I went ahead and canceled as well, but I never would have noticed that they were there unless I went and looked at those past transactions.
And also expect your ego to be kind of slapped, because I always thought, oh, I'm not doing that bad, and then I looked and I was like,
Yes.
show my laptop, like, I'm doing that.
And on the other end of that, a lot of people don't want to look because they have that negative expectation. But you gotta look, you guys. You have to look. The monster goes away when you look at him. Not really, because the death doesn't go away. But the fear of it. The fear of it. All right, so our action steps for this is to total your spending for each category. And also to discover any other monthly expenses that we talked about. Part 4, like I mentioned before, is to assign each expense to a budgeting category. These are literally going to start taking you through step by step. All right, part 5 is where you actually take each of the expenses for that category. So for our housing category, we'll have rent in there, this is just an example, gas, electric, water. So your total housing expenses is $1,380. That helps you to monitor that category. Welcome. And so for the very last part, at this point in time, you should have all of your categories listed. So looking at the budget categories, we have giving, your housing insurance, your subscriptions. You have a dollar amount set for each of these categories. Now it's time for you to determine which 3 categories do you need to monitor. We don't want to focus on too many, just about 3. And again, those 3 that we mainly will be focusing on are miscellaneous and random spending, because there's nearly no plan for that. So we just got to make sure that we keep an eye on how that's operating. Next are entertainment, fun, and dining out. That normally gets a life of its own. We want to monitor that category. And for some of us, the next one may be groceries. So our steps 2, really simple, is to estimate your cash inflow. So I like to remember that the cash in controls the cash that's going out. If it's not coming in, it can't go out. Never spend more than you earn. I know that you guys have heard of this before. How can you spend more than you earn? Anybody can answer to that? Great. Anybody want to call in? Okay. All right. And so when it comes to your income, I just want to remind you all that it's important for us to always look for ways for us to increase our income. Your budget is set on what your income is. And one of the greatest ways for you to do that is to indulge in personal development. Because once you begin to increase yourself, your knowledge, your personal value, that's when your focus begins to change. So for this particular example, we're really just going through and estimating your cash inflow. So you want to take into consideration every source of income that you have. If you have multiple sources of income, you want to make sure we add all of them. When to use an estimate or an actual. Some of you may have a varying income. It may be variable from month to month. In that particular instance, I would suggest for you to use an average from the past maybe 3 to 6 months, if possible. But we do want to make sure that we have an amount that we are starting with, even if it's a variety of amounts from month to month. And again, just a reminder, guys, we got to increase our income. We have to increase our income, and coming to classes like this, where you are engaging in that personal development, where you are learning more, is going to help you to do that. Our step 3 is to calculate your net cash flow. So our net cash flow ultimately is pop quiz. It starts with a B. O. Bottom line. Okay. Your net cash flow ultimately is your bottom line. It's what you have left over. And if you can, what we should do is leverage the power of what's left over. That's what I'm going to teach you here today with the committed budget. And so that's what our net cash flow does. Again, it's what we have left over. It's our profit. It's basically our bottom line. And it takes us away from being confused. We are no longer confused. We know exactly what's going on. So how do we go about doing this? You want to take your monthly income and subtract all of your monthly expenses. So those categories, you just go through and add up those 10 categories and subtract them. This is how much you have left over. This is your bottom line. This is what you have to actually do extra things with. Now, I want to take a moment to point out, in our budget, we've already taken into consideration our entertainment. We've taken our fun into consideration. We've already made a plan for some of our random spending, fuel, gas, birthday gifts, things like that, right? So when it comes to what's left over, this is where the power is. If you planned for all that you could, this is where the power is, where we begin to make our commitments. So really quickly, what does the net cash flow tell you? It tells you how much you've been overspending. You're gonna see that very clearly. Because if it's negative, you're overspending. It tells you how much that you can actually dedicate to important expenses. So if there's something new that comes up, if there's something that you may want to invest in, it'll let you know how much you're able to dedicate to that. It's gonna tell us what our savings commitment ability is and what our debt commitment ability is. We're gonna get into that here in just a moment. And it ultimately lets us know what's left over after our necessary expenditures. But if we're being really privy to our finances, it's not just necessary, but we've also included our wants in there too. It lets us know our bottom line. All right, so number 4, our step 4 is where we actually create the budget plan. This is where you understand how, you are supposed to understand how you got where you are and change the direction of your wealth. So just like GPS, I love using the reference of GPS when it comes to your finances, because everyone has somewhere that they want to go. Everyone has the destination that they want to go to, but GPS is never, they will never, ever, ever give you the plan to your destination unless they know where you are, right? And the same way for yourself, it could be a little bit difficult for you to get to your destination unless you recognize and acknowledge where you currently are. And that begins with setting this budget. So a few different budgeting methods that you can select: the 50/30, the cash envelope. You can use a smart app. There are plenty of them out there. So choose a budget method to get started. Go into this with a structured plan, with a specific method that you're going to be using. And make a list of the things that you're going to need to get started. If you're using the envelope method, you're going to need to get some envelopes. You're also going to need to come up with a plan to go to the bank every other Friday. And when you withdraw your cash, you want to make sure you do so in multiple bills, right? So that you're able to divvy everything up. I had so much fun. I promise. I would sit there and I'm like, that's some for you, some for you. And I just felt like I could visually see that all of my bills and all of my finances were taken care of.
It's like playing Monopoly, and I think if you liked Monopoly, I would like to.
Absolutely. I will say that I was the kid, like I've always been like the financing, I've always liked money, and just like the managing of it. I used to earn my money when I was little. I don't know if any of you did that. I see you chuckling a little bit. Did you do that?
No.
No? Okay. I did. I wanted it to be straight. You know, it would be nice. My grandfather, he would always give me money to make sure I had it. I had the crispiest dollars. Anyway.
But I would put it in a book.
It would come out the same way. Yep, after a while. And you know what? Hopefully you forget about it when it's in that book.
I had found it.
Yeah. All right, so another thing is to research the how-tos. I want you guys to really become obsessed with this process. I recently started a new occupation this past October, total new career. Total new, I got a certificate and everything, totally new, didn't have anything to do with an MBA. And it only took me a few months to do that, but I was obsessed. I would Google a life in the day of, this type of person. I would Google anything, like just become obsessed with your finances so that it's always, always on your mind. And 5 rules for maintenance. Come up with rules that you will have in regards to how you will maintain your money. When you see that janitor and all over the 5 things that he's going to be doing when it comes to your finances. And so when it comes to the budgeting method, I just want to go through the cash envelope method really quickly. We want to clarify the basics. It was a great question that you had gave in regards to, using cash and using your card. There will be a combination of that. So I want you guys, for you specifically, to figure out what those rules will be for yourself. How will you use the cash? How will you use card for which bills? Also to determine your budget duration and your review period. For me, when I was going through that 2.5, or not 2.5, for that less than 2 year time period, I was budgeting every week. I was getting paid every 2. when I was budgeting every week. Even sometimes in the middle of the week, I would take a look at it. Yes,
Yeah, just for those that use credit cards, and this is something I did many years ago. Because I love carrying the cash, you know, and it's just that feeling of, do I want to give up that $5? You know?
yes.
But also I carried in my backpack, I carried index cards. And so instead of envelopes, I had index cards. And so I had my top, and I kept subtracting. So if I used a credit card, then I immediately subtracted on that index card. And so that way I knew when I was getting close to zero.
I
So
love
just
that.
just something study. And so I put all those in an envelope and would pull them out whenever I would spend in particular category.
I like that. I like that. That actually reminds me of something that I had did similar. When I did make the transition and I was no longer using my cash envelopes, I was tracking every dollar. And I like to create, I kind of told you guys that, I created this little pamphlet thing. And, you know, I had little columns. I wrote every single dollar I spent. If I went to the gas station and bought a water for $1.07, I wrote it down. It got to the point to where I didn't want to have to write down that I spent this money. Like if I want to go and get this meal, you know, I'm really hungry, I want to go out and just get something instead of going home, I'm going to have to write that down. And then like at the end of every day, I would total it. It's going to make my total higher than it was yesterday. Yeah, I'm not going, let's go home. Let's go home and eat. I'm not going to do that. So that's a perfect example. Like it takes effort. It takes effort to do that. You just keep going on about your day. Just little things. What is his name? Jeff Olson, wonderful book called The Slight Edge. Small disciplines, they are simple to do, but they are also simple not to do. And they are the biggest determining factor in whether you experience success or failure in those simple daily disciplines. All right, a couple other things. Just to think about cutbacks, where you can cut back, where you can probably substitute, eat at home, right? Maybe enjoy taking some cooking lessons on YouTube.
Mhm.
And next is the money date. A money date is basically a date where you're meeting with your money. Say you're dating someone, you may be courting them before marriage, right? And you have that time that you spend with them. That same time should be spent with your finances as well. All right, so our budget is not done yet. Like we've created it, we got the categories and all of that. But wait, there is more. For our step 5, this is where we actually get into setting our debt and savings commitments. This is where everything really takes the cake. Know where you stand, then make the plan. So we already know where we stand in regards to where we've created our budget. Now we are about to make a plan for our commitments, a plan to save more money and a plan to get out of debt faster than what we normally would. So for a debt, first thing you want to do is make a list of your current and outstanding debts. Inside of the digital offer that I told you about, you'll have a sheet that sort of looks like this where you can write down your debt information. You want to make sure that you have the name, the balance, your interest rate, and your minimum payment. This is the category we're really going to be paying attention to. I want you guys to refer to your bank statements for details. Really pull out that statement because your interest rate, a lot of times we kind of bypass this. We need to know what your interest rate is. You need to know what your interest rate is. They get high. All right, so I actually used an example from one of my clients' budgets that she had did and just filled it out just to give you all a visual in regards to what this completely would look like. And so our total monthly minimum payment, all of these amounts here comes up to 503. And so what this means is basically every single month, you are making a minimum payment towards your debt of $503 every month. So your minimum payment isn't 25. It's not 116. It's 503. That's important. So how to calculate your debt commitment? So first, we wanna take our total monthly minimum payment, which is that 503 that we talked about, right? Earlier, we had figured out how much money we had left over, our net cash flow, remember that? That was how much we had left over after all of our necessary expenses were taken care of. From that amount, let's just say, for example, it was $400. We have $400 of our net cash flow. This is how much money we have left over after we planned for all of our budgeting. Well, from that extra money, we're gonna take 150 of that. And we're gonna contribute that to our debt. So this is our new debt commitment. From the money that we had left over from our budget that we set, we're gonna take extra funds and add it to our debt payment. So every month, you're not gonna be paying the 503. Every month, you will be paying $653. Okay, you guys see how we did that? And so this takes your mindset from thinking, oh, I only have this much debt to pay this month. Nope, we have this much. And every single month, you are paying an additional $150 towards your debt. So this is where you use this is where you use your debt commitment and then apply it to your commitment strategy. All right, congratulations, you have a debt commitment. Yes.
Where did you get the 150 from, or is that just a number we create?
Yeah, that was just a number that I had made up because I started with the example from here. So you remember when we talked about your net cash flow
Yes.
is ultimately the money that you have left over after you've budgeted for everything.
Mhm.
So after all of your expenses are budgeted for, and this is how much money you have left over to do whatever with, right? That's your net cash flow. So we're just gonna, so I said, for example, let's say that we had about $300 left over from all of our expenses. Let's take 150 of that and add it to our debt. Does that make sense?
So it would be half of what's left over every time, or?
It's whatever you decide. If you decide you wanna, if you have,
Yeah.
sorry, guys. If you decide, let's say, for example, anyone, throw me a number out.
21.
All right, let's say that you only have $21 left over. No, that's good. Because some people literally only have $21 left over after they've taken care of all their expenses. So Paul, that was good. So let's say you only have $21 left over. And we need to try to come up with this next thing. The first thing that I want to encourage you to do is find a way to cut back. Is find a way to cut back on your budget and make more room for it. So let's say, for example, we take about $100 off from subscriptions. We're gonna cancel our Netflix. We're gonna cancel, some of these subscriptions that we don't necessarily need. We're gonna cancel that iTunes, right? Just for a couple months so we can alleviate some money. So now we have $121, right? And so from there, we can decide, let's take 50 of that. This is how much we have left over. Instead of me taking this and spending it on something that I'm not even gonna see, I'm not even gonna remember, I'm not even gonna recall, I'm gonna take 50 of that 121 and apply it to my debt. Does that help you guys to understand a little bit more? So it's your decision, but it's simply just a strategy of how to come up with it. And so talking about our debt, there are two methods for you to choose from, two of the most popular methods. The first one is the snowball method. This is where you pay off your lowest balance first. You're going up the hill. Your debt it's not your debt is growing, but you're paying it off first. The next one is your avalanche. This is where you're paying off the highest interest first. I prefer, me personally, when I was paying off my debt, I used the snowball method. Simply because it gave me a lot more encouragement, a lot more motivation to just knock out those little ones first. But the key to using these two methods, once you have determined your debt commitment, so let's say it's that $50, right? But the key to success is when you pay off the first debt, move that additional money to the next debt. So let's say that we take a look at this here. The very first debt that we're going to pay off is this $24, no, sorry. Is this one, right? That's the smallest debt first. And then, let's say that's already paid off, because it was, what was that, extra $50. So we take that and we apply it to here. And every single month, this account gets that extra $50. Once this is completely paid off, then, this is where it gets tricky, you guys. This is the strategy, right? You were paying this debt, but it's paid off now. And you were paying an additional $50 to it. So technically, you were paying $178 a month. Am I right? We're not gonna just act like this 178 is gone. No. We're gonna take this 178 and we are gonna start applying that to our next debt. Next highest, right? And however much this balance was, you take that and apply it to the next debt. So ultimately, even though your debt is being paid down every single month, and even though your debts are going down, you're still making the same amount of payments every single month to pay it down faster. I had a visual of this, but it can get really complicated, and I didn't want to take up too much time with that. But I just want to make sure that we do understand the strategy and the concept behind how that works. Yes.
Can you explain the other one with the two?
Yeah, the avalanche.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically it's the same concept, but yet we would start here. No, scratch that. We would start here, where you have the highest interest rate. These interest rates are pretty low.
Yeah.
Really low. This was in 1980. No, it's fine. But yeah, so you would start here and you would have that, let's say you have that $50 that we were paying, right? So your minimum payment is what? 50 and the 25, 75, right? And so you take that 75, this is already done and paid for. You no longer have to pay $25 every month, but we are. We're gonna apply that to the next debt to get it done faster. And then we're gonna apply that to this one. And this gives an extra 75, right? And then once this is all paid off, we apply the 75 plus this to the next one. Whatever the next one is. Yes.
So depending on your personality, I would say if you want the quick wins, that first snowball effect is great. And if you want the fastest results, go with that highest interest rate first, because you will actually get out of that faster by starting with the highest interest rates.
Absolutely.
If you got the self-control and you don't need that immediate win.
Yes. Good point. Thank you, Josh. Yes.
And based on the verse, the breaker that I had led with to begin with, it's taking that mallet and just smashing through
Yes.
each one of these, led by the Lord through that gate to get you out of.
Absolutely. I actually had it like I was going to tie that into the
Okay,
speech,
sorry.
but I just got I get so caught up. It was wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
You know, one of your examples up there that the last one, or one, you know, which I happen to notice, and this happens in this day and age where you have this interest rate 0, right? So we call that OPM, or other people's money. You know, so if you're, let's say, for instance, you bought a car and it was 0% interest, then you're not paying any interest on that debt. You're just going to pay the car off over a period of time. So that might be one you'd kind of hang off on, right? Because you're paying down those ones at 16 or higher percent of interest than the other ones. So that's just something I noticed.
Unless it balloons at the end and bites you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. But today's day and age, like you were mentioning, there's a lot of this
Yeah.
with the firm and pay later, Klarna and all that. Guys, be careful with that.
You gotta be careful.
Be careful with that. I actually would recommend you not use it if you don't have to, because it's sort of like a credit card. Don't use it if you don't have to. One of my mentors, she's a financial guru. She's someone that I look up to, and I talk to her, you know, quite often. She doesn't believe in credit cards. Like, she does not use them at all. She's like, what do we use a card for? I only use it if I have to. Only if I have the money to literally pay it off, like right then and there. I was like, see, that's that discipline. All right, guys, we are almost finished here. I'm literally coming up to the end. Very quickly, I want to go through. Sorry, is there any other questions about the debt strategy at all?
So if you have lower debt, then you would recommend the avalanche method, right? Or,
Yeah, if you have a lower debt amount, if your debt isn't that high, like the total of all your debt, then I would recommend the avalanche, I would recommend the snowball. If you don't have that much debt, right? But if you're trying, it really just depends upon what you prefer. If you're trying to get it paid off fast and you just want to get it done and out the way, it may be a little bit higher, then I would suggest the avalanche, which is the higher interest. A lot of times people go with that snowball, even though it's not paying it off faster, it's a mental thing of just knocking them off and crossing them off the list. Good questions, you guys. Thank you. All right, so what are your savings goals? So a few goals that we could have is our emergency savings, maybe a vacation, maybe a nice pretty car, or maybe even a new house. But a lot of people need to start somewhere. And so I always want to suggest that you have a short-term goal, one or two, and you have a long-term goal. And I want to focus on your short-term goals. I think it is very important that we get some level of accomplishment as soon as we can, because that boosts our momentum. It boosts our motivation. It helps us to continue to keep going. And if you don't have financial goals set yet, if you don't have emergency savings, that's where I suggest that you start, is with the goal for emergency savings. Now, I want you to use your vision to map out your goal plan. First, you're going to make a list of your financial goals and your target date. I want you to calculate your monthly savings goal for each goal. And this is basically where you determine your total savings goal. So this is how much you want to save. Let's say you want to save, let's just say like $500. And you want to do that in 5 months. It'll take you $100 per month to save. This breaks down your savings goal. So let's say again, you want to save $500 and you want to do so within the next 5 months. That means that you would have to save $100 each month. Does that make sense? All right. And so at this time, it's important that you set a priority for your goals. This is where we determine, where do we start? Here are a couple questions that you should ask yourself in regards to determine the priority. Try using a scale of 1 to 10 in regards to what has high and what has low priority. I'm going to kind of go through these last few slides just to be mindful of our time here. This is just an example of the goals and the savings goals filled out. We have our priority over there. So for this one, Kimmy decided that she's going to focus on one goal. She's going to focus on the emergency savings goal. And again, I want you to customize your savings commitment plan to your budget. So let's see here. All right, so we will actually follow those same steps in regards to, we go back and we look at our net cash flow. So let's say, just for example, and again, we're just kind of throwing numbers out there. Let's go back to that 300. Let's say that we had that 300 left over. We already have acclimated 150 towards our debt, right? So we have about a 150 left over. Let's say we'll dedicate $100 towards our savings commitment. So every single month, we're going to add $100 to our savings commitment. But the thing about this is we're going to add our debt commitment and our savings commitment back into our budget. It's an expense now. Your commitment is now an expense. We went through these 6 steps. Ultimately, it's for you to determine what your new debt commitment expense is and what your savings commitment expense is. As we come up upon finishing, going through the 6 steps, these are just a few steps for you to take in regards to reviewing your budget and adjusting it along the way. So this is step number 6. You have created your savings commitment, you created your debt commitment, and now it's time for us to go back and to have that regular maintenance to our budget. And this is where we review and we adjust. This is where I want to suggest for you to go back to your budgeting categories. and to focus on those categories and how much you're spending. Focus on those three main categories that you're going to monitor. And lastly, we talked about the money day. So I want to go into a little bit more detail in regards to what that is. For your money day, we talked about it's sort of like you're courting your money, right? So like you're developing that relationship. We want to basically look at it as if you're developing that relationship with your money. Determine when that will be, what day of the week, specific date and time. Have your financial organization together, your bookkeeping. Keep track of your progress. We want to look at how were we 2 months ago, 3 months ago, so that we can just keep track moving forward. And analyze your spending. Ask yourself questions. Challenge yourself. Ask these questions down here. Did I stick to the budget? No. Where did I overspend? What purchases could have been avoided? How can I prevent this from happening again? What can I do with my extra cash flow? Somebody writing, I'll wait a second. And so I want to thank you all because this sums up the 6 steps to a committed budget. I really hope this information was helpful. One thing that I want to share with you before I go is a financial snapshot evaluation. If you actually scan this QR code here, you will be able to go to the website and actually look at some of the testimonials from other Noble participants. There's a couple videos on there in regards to their feedback and how that snapshot was. The snapshot evaluation is ultimately a session in which you and I will work together inside of a pre-calculated Excel document. And we're going to go through 5 steps to determine what your evaluation is. When doing this, we're actually going to set your set commitment and your debt commitment. So it's already plugged into the formula for you. And we'll actually go through this appointment in which I'm walking you through the steps, I'm giving you the information, and I'm showing you how you can go through and complete this evaluation yourself each quarter throughout the year. So the special on this here today, normally it is $94. However, for Noble, it is only $49. It is only $49 for you guys this weekend, right? Or is it today? This weekend or today? But the thing about this is, if you actually come to the appointment, you do the work, all you have to do is just show up. 100% of those funds will be refundable to you by Noble. So Noble basically just wants to support you in this process. They want to see that you actually walk through this process, that you're actually applying the information that we have, and you will be rewarded by ultimately having a free session with me. So I wanted to share that with you. This information also on the back of your on the back of your worksheets. Now, this is the very last thing that I want to share with you is we went through these 6 steps, but these 6 steps is actually an actual process. But these 6 steps is a process that I created inside of an Excel document. So this is where you can actually, it's 50% off just for you guys here at Noble until the end of the month. But it's an Excel document. It's an Excel workbook, actually. And you actually just type in your information. There's a budget on the top for your past expenses, and there's a future budget on the bottom. And it pre-calculates everything for you. It also has a chart in here to show you what your budget looks like in a chart format. But it also calculates your savings goal. You know how you went through that calculation? It does that. It does the debt as well. And there's also 5 additional pre-calculated budget sheets for you to use with pre-planning as well. So I wanted to share that with you all in regards to using that. Yes.
Sorry, clarifying question. If we do the one you just mentioned before this, you'll do this with us, or do we need to buy this before the?
So these are 2 totally separate things. They're 2 totally separate. This one, they don't necessarily go in order or anything at all. If you want to work with me directly, this is a session to work with me where we actually completing a snapshot evaluation. So this is where we're just going through the 5 steps where we're going to calculate your net cash flow. We're going to take a look at those monthly expenses and go through your savings and debt commitment. For this here, you just get 1 notebook that we work through, 1 workbook. For this here, you You get the actual planning sheet. This, you do not work with me. This is completely on your own. And you'll get the Excel workbook that has the main sheet in there and also those 5 calculated sheets. But it also comes with the physical workbook for the visuals that I showed throughout the presentation, so where you can print it out and write out everything as well. So if you're not digital, you can use paper. If you like both, you can use both.
I have a question on that one, the Excel spreadsheet. Is that like a one-time and can you use it multiple months? Or is it like a subscription if you wanted to use it a different month, a different spreadsheet, different, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so no, it is one spreadsheet.
Okay.
And you would basically reuse it.
Okay.
And so, if you guys would like to stick around, because I know that we have another presentation coming up. If you would like to stick around at the very, very end, I'll be more than happy to sort of show you a tutorial of what it looks like very quickly. I can do that, but I definitely want to make sure that we are mindful. We are mindful of our time and that we have, Josh come up because we have a really good, story that he's going to share with us, and I want to make sure we have time. So I'll come back to this because I know that we may have some more questions. I want to make sure that you guys take a look at it. Are there any other questions that we have about the presentation at this time? Nope. All right, you guys. Well, I want to thank you for allowing me to share with you. And feel free to subscribe to my YouTube page.
Thank you, Kayla, for coming up and sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, who's thinking about that mallet and just smashing down on some of those various debts that we have, just to get rid of them? Okay, and God certainly helped me through that process. I don't know how many people that I've talked to who put a plan like this together, and once they see it on the paper, they just get so motivated every time they see those numbers coming down, those debt numbers coming down. But then what's even more exciting is when you take all that money that you're spending on a monthly basis to pay debt down, and when that debt's gone, you start taking that same money and putting it into creating wealth. Isn't that exciting? I mean, taking those hundreds that you're paying off, that you're paying every month to pay off debt, and shifting that to start making money. And so each month you start seeing how you're making money going up each month. And that's what really becomes exciting. Okay. And great. But Noble's very excited. We've done this for how long? Gosh, Susie, how many people have we helped to go through your $49 that we've...
It's been quite a few.
Quite a few people, so that you have to pay that first $49 yourself to get the help. But once you complete it with her, once you complete that budget with her, and then she contacts Susie, and then we write a check and we fund that money for what you did. Because there again, Noble doesn't want to just teach you something. Okay, we want to invest in you so that you can keep moving forward and having success. Okay, we're gonna take a few minute break. What we build in there? How many minutes or so? Just take a quick break.
5 or 10 minutes.
5-10 minutes. So let's go till 5 after 11. Okay. Take a little break, get something else to eat, restrooms in the back here, quick breather outside or whatever, and then we'll come back and get started and we'll introduce Josh.
Well, it doesn't, it's okay because that means that you focus on getting information.
It's not okay for a social media person. We don't use them.
I turn my toes up to Apple.
Well,
You guys are beyond my phone ability.
heard that Apple is better at organizing things for you. And on Android, I kind of like everywhere, so
Yeah.
it helps for my readings.
Yeah. She's curious about this. Should I tell him?
Yeah, I just wanted to see what it was.
Yeah, no, I realized that I can change the box.
Same.
This way, I could actually see the screen better.
Oh, yeah, you did.
And I think I can plug now.
And so, but he,
Sure.
Yeah.
We should just get it long one and bring it every time.
Be a long too. That was. Pretty long there.
Yeah, 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 no. It's just actually, whenever there's. Oh, I. That's what.
Huh?
I usually like so when I change on my phone, that's what like, I mean, it's like when you change the mindset, you see it.
Yes, they were done.
Yeah. No, I do. No, it's not every day.
It is. It's been so long.
I used
How are you?
Many times, I just went through my head and I'm like, what would Joshua go out and do? How can I do what he talks about? So there's a follow-up, there's today.
You ever do the,
Yeah, it's hard. I got
next steps? Assessment thing.
Exactly, start there, because I don't need to go to you, waste your time, I'm not wasting my time.
You should probably do it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's there. It's like having all the time.
Right.
Okay, one more minute, folks, one more minute. I'll come back.
Down here for about 7 years. From
Okay. Let's get back to action. Food truck. We're starting there. A little bit. Okay, Kayla, was there any? She didn't jump in. go. Is there anything else you wanted to share that you did, Kayla?
Yes, really quickly. If anyone would like to purchase a copy of the book here, just let me know. It is available for $25. This here, just a couple seconds, I just want to share what this is because I saw someone looking at it, just wondering what it is. This is what I call the My Money Can package. This is actually something that I had created a couple years ago. Love creating things. And ultimately, it is sort of like a mini piggy bank. But the thing about this is, it's a mini piggy bank with specifications. So the thing about this, you cannot open it. You cannot open it. It's really hard to get into. So when you do try to open it, be very careful when doing so. But you open it with a can opener. And again, it's not easy to open, and the purpose is for you to save cash only. It's not for coins, it's just for cash. So you fold up that dollar bill as small as you can, stuff it down in here, and on the can, you're actually write what you're saving for. You write the date that you started, and the key to this money can is the open date. You actually write down the date that you are going to open it, and you also write down your savings goal. Let's say that you are not going to open this can until June of 2024 for a family reunion, and you just stuff cash down here. I'm talking about maybe a 50, a 100, a 20, a 5. You could dedicate it to just saving 5s, just saving 10s. The first time that I actually went through using this can, I saved, it was about $650. I actually have a video, all these, dollars were just unfolding to me and my son. And so I just want to share this with you guys. In regards to this, there's an envelope in here. I'm really big on keeping your money separated. So let's say that you're out and about and you want to save inside of your My Money can. Well, keep this envelope in your card, in your wallet, same size as a card, and keep that money separated. So that when you do get home, you can actually go ahead and put it into your money can, and you're still disciplined with saving money. Most importantly, you are not touching it. So I wanted to share that with you. This is available for $20 if anyone is interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Kayla. So, got to get the debt out of the way, right? But then, what do we do on the other side? And Josh, Vidor is here to share a little bit about that. He's got some fantastic, true stories, realistic stories that I just love hearing. I've heard them now a few times, but I just love hearing every time because it just continues to motivate me in some of those areas as well, not only personally, but in business as well. But I've known Josh for many years through church, through business, through coming here and being willing to share with folks with Noble. And he just has a heart for seeing people to get financially in a strength position. And that's kind of where we all want to be, right? And we want to serve the kingdom. And the more that we can make, all right, the more in that one of those categories is giving, right? And what more can we do to give more, to not only help our growth, but what more can we give more to help others and to help the kingdom as well? So, Josh, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Chaz. And thank you, Kayla, for sharing great ideas for a foundation. If we don't have a strong foundation, whatever we're building, it's probably not going to be sustainable. That's our faith, whether that's our finances, in any category of our life, we need a strong foundation. I want to motivate you guys and be excited about growing your wealth and a brighter financial future, and a better tomorrow than today. So I'm going to talk a whole bunch about money and growing wealth, but there's one maybe clause or disclaimer I want to add in there. Financial freedom is just another wall if you don't have Jesus. So if any of you guys do not know Jesus, personal savior, I'm wasting your time, Kayla's wasting your time if we're just talking about money. Come talk to me afterwards if you have any questions, because that is the key to freedom, is Jesus. As long as that's clear, then I can progress to talking about building wealth. Today, we're going to talk about a few different categories, and I want to motivate you to grow from just a surviving mindset to a thriving mindset, to be excited about growing wealth and what you can do with that, who you can bless with that, what you can change, your legacy, your future, so that your tomorrow isn't the same as your yesterday, and your future continues to look brighter. Who in here gets excited when you talk about money? Most people, when money conversation gets like past a little bit of level, they're kind of like, ugh. Either there's that like feeling of, we don't talk about finances. That's my parents. I never heard them talk about money once growing up, even though we were dirt poor. Or there's the people that are like, oh, I got debt and I don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing. I want to move past all of that and go into a growth mindset. I want to challenge you guys to just open up your mind to like an exciting future that's brighter and better than where you're at now. I also want you to have a fluid mindset where maybe the things that you've been doing up until now, you can critically look at it and say, hey, what do I need to change or shift or grow? Okay, because just because it was working for you yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work for you tomorrow. Maybe there's a better option. So I want you to kind of progress in your thinking and keep an open mindset. And so I want to back up a little bit and give you guys a little bit of a snapshot of back in time for me. I want to talk about a time when about maybe 15, 20 years ago, a little less gray hair, and I was working at a rental property. And this rental property was, I mean, in a rough part of town, I'm not gonna lie, but that's where I got started. And I picture me, I'm caulking the back door. There's an alley behind me, being a good landlord because there was leaky, drafty air coming in there. I hear something and I turn around, and there's two guys with guns drawn on me. One of them says, turn around, kneel down, or we're gonna kill you. What do you think was going through my mind at that time? It was a Buckeyes winning season. Do you think I was concerned about what the next game was? The iPhone was just about to make its debut. Everybody was talking about it. Do you think I was concerned about maybe I would never get to try out this new smartphone? Actually, I didn't know what it was at the time. No. I had just bought my first brand new vehicle. I had saved up and bought a brand new red Chevy 4x4 Silverado truck. It was great. Like brand new 4x4. It's like a powered 2-wheel drive version, and it was great. And they were gonna steal it. Do you think I was worried about that? I wasn't worried about that either. What do you think? Anybody have any idea what would be going through my mind? Yeah, so I was thinking, oh darn, like the business plan that I had maybe wasn't great. This went sideways on me. It would sound like a great plan to have rental properties. But now they're gonna kill me. And then the next thought went through my mind. My home address isn't the love apartment, it's the registration. And I have a wife and son at home. My wife's pregnant with my daughter, and darn, I really wanted to meet my daughter. That was the primary, what was going through my head. So for a second, I'm tuning out what's going on and I'm praying for protection for my family. I'm thinking it's over, it's done, right? I'm just cooperating with whatever they're wanting and hoping that they don't shoot me. Well, one of them comes back after eventually getting the truck started. He says, don't shoot them, it'll be too loud. Evidently, that's what my life's worth is, the decibel rating. So they didn't shoot me, they drive away. And as they're driving away, I realized my business plan needs to be altered a little bit. It started out strong, I'm gonna have rental properties, but where I'm at in life right now, it's not serving me well in this part of town, this scenario. It's just some things needed to be tweaked, right? So a good plan still can become an ish plan if you don't shift over time. You've got to go to reevaluate where you're at, what your plans are, and make that shift. So why did I have a rental in a rough part of town, and why was I over there caulking out the back door of a rental property? If you back up even a few more years, I'll give you a background of what brought me to that point. But before we go there, I want you guys to go through a worksheet with me, and I'll play some music so you're not distracted, and you'll have about 3 to 5 minutes to work on it. But I want you to really challenge some of the things that maybe haven't been working for you or were great, but maybe you need to tweak them a little bit or adjust for where you're at now. Give them the time. Try to get pretty well. Okay. Can anybody remember a childhood goal that was a huge deal to you when you were maybe in middle school or younger? Like a big goal. Anybody? Anybody? How about back up even younger? Anybody remember wanting to get rid of training wheels on their bicycle? No, nobody remembers that. I can remember wanting to get rid of training wheels, crashing and burning many times without the training wheels. But if that was my goal today, was to get rid of training wheels, ride on 2 wheels instead of 4, would that be a good goal for me right now? I think we could all agree that probably would be maybe a aiming low. That doesn't mean it wasn't a good goal. That is a fantastic goal at the time. But I've grown and I've changed and I need to shift my goals as well. Anybody identify any goals that maybe was good, isn't quite as good, need to shift? Any ideas came to mind when you were writing? Anything? Any brave people? No?
A way to look at money management.
Okay. And how did that shift, or how are you realizing that needs to change?
Just because over the years, having issues with money management, I know that needs to change.
Okay, yeah, track record is showing that you want a better future than the track record leading up to that point. So why was I working on that rental property? What was I doing in that part of town to begin with? I'll back up a little bit further. I have 9 siblings, part of a pretty large family, and 2 parents that wouldn't hold a regular job, and we grew up in poverty. It's like to go hungry. And I remember a particular stretch of time between when I was 10 and 13 where starvation was a real issue. My parents were too proud for public assistance, so there were times when food was limited. And I can remember this one time around when I was, I think, 12, having a bowl of oatmeal and looking in the floating oats and water. It was more like oatmeal soup because my parents would buy a 25-pound sack of oats and that would last months for a family of 11. And as I'm like counting the floating oats, knowing it's not going to fill me up, I'm looking at that bowl and I told myself, self, I don't know what it's going to take, but I will not raise a family. I'm not going to repeat the same thing. I don't even know what that looks like because I didn't have other experiences to draw on, but I knew whatever it took, it was not going to be. So by the time I was 13, I started mowing lawns, delivering newspapers, and by 14, I had 20 lawn customers and 2 newspaper routes that I was delivering. It was a lot of times were before sun up till after sundown working. I got the workaholic thing down pat really early. And I started earning money, which was good. I contributed to put food on the table, and that was excellent. But way more important than the money I earned was the people I interacted with and the different mindset I noticed. I noticed a lot of them were successful. They didn't even have a job. They had a business. And I said to myself, someday I'm going to have a business. Didn't even know what that would look like. I didn't even know what the business would be, right? But I liked the idea of not working a regular job. And actually have a business that wasn't capped, right? Tuck that away. And I noticed another thing is some people own real estate. And a lot of the successful ones, it seemed like all of them, once they got past a certain age, just started acquiring real estate. Maybe it was their own house. Maybe it was rental properties. Maybe it was commercial rentals. But I saw this consistent thread among successful people as they own real estate. So I said to myself, someday I'm going to own real estate. Didn't know how, didn't know when, but I just kind of tucked that away. I was like, that's something that's a goal that I'm going to have to go towards. Well, fast forward the handful of years to being a young adult, I got stuck in the same rat race of working a job, getting comfortable. I was stuck. I didn't have a urgent need or like hunger to get me past that next step. So I was just kind of in a pattern of just working a job, saving a little bit of money, and I had some side gigs that earned me a little bit of extra money, and I was saving on the side. But that jump to owning my own business, it was like an itch, it was an urge, but it was kind of background because there was this fear of letting go of where I was at. And this went on for a little while. And at the time I lived at the Continent Apartments near 161 and 71. And every day, an older gentleman used to walk around the apartment complex. It was his exercise. I think he lived there. I actually don't remember if he actually lived on site or not. But I had a conversation with him. I got to know this gentleman named Dan. And I shared with him, like, I am stuck. I want to take that next step to having my own business, but I'm comfortable where I'm at and kind of afraid to let go of it to take that next step. Kind of I'm on third base and I'm afraid to steal home, right? Like I don't want to get my foot off base. I'm kind of like, I was stuck in limbo. He shared a story with me that changed my life. Do you guys want to hear the story? Yeah. A long, long time ago in a land far, far away, because every good story has to start that way, there was a monk. And this monk had a follower or a disciple, if you will. And this disciple wanted desperately to know the meaning of life, his purpose in life. And he followed the monk around everywhere he went, pestering. I want to know the meaning of life and I want to know my purpose. And months went by. He never got an answer. The monk just kind of avoided answering this question. And And one night, the monk said, tomorrow morning, we're going to get answers to your questions. This disciple was so excited he didn't sleep. He's up all night. It's like the kid that's waiting for Christmas as he sees Christmas gifts around the tree. How do you sleep that night? Sun starts poking up over the horizon, pops out of bed, runs to wake up the monk. It's morning, let's go. They get dressed, and they walk to the far edge of the property where there was a pond. It wasn't a very deep pond, and the water was still. And the monk tells his follower to step into the water, kneel into the water, and look at his reflection, clear his mind of everything, peer into there and tell him what he sees. He stares down there and he looks up and he says, I just see my reflection. And the monk says, no, I want you to peer deeply into the water and I want you to clear your mind of all thoughts. Just tell me what you see. Well, this disciple's looking down here and he's kind of feeling a little awkward because all he sees is his reflection. So after a long, awkward pause, he says, all I see is my reflection. I don't see anything else. So the monk walks up beside him, kneels down as if to peer also into to see his reflection. But instead, he grabs the young guy's head, shoves it under the water. And this poor guy is kicking and thrashing, and bubbles are going up until not so much bubbles and not so much kicking and thrashing. The monk yanks him out of the water, shakes him off, and says, what did you see? Well, when he regains his breath and stops coughing up water, he says, I didn't see anything. All I could think about was I needed air. And the monk, in almost a whisper, says, well, when you want answers, or you want answers to your questions as much as you wanted air, you'll find it. I realized through this story that it wasn't that I didn't have the tools in place or a game plan or even the next steps to create my business. It was, I actually had to get past a mental hurdle. It was up here. It was a choice I had to make to flip that switch. Same as if you're going to do a budget, same as if you're going to decide that you're going to invest in something instead of spend it. It's a choice. How bad do you want it? A lot of times we'll find a reason to not do something. But at the end of the day, it's a choice, right? We make that choice we're going to do. Within 2 months of Dan telling me this story, I had put in my 2 weeks notice at my job, had started my business, and was in contract to buy my first 2 rental properties, one of which we started out with, telling you a couple of years later, maybe had a rough spot there. I want to challenge you guys to look at some of these, what feels like roadblocks, feels like I can't get past it, as just a hurdle and something that we mentally have to get past. It's that next step that we have to take. It may not be comfortable, may not be easy, but it's something that will be the defining change of our success or our staying right where we're at right now. Henry Ford had a great saying that says, the man who thinks he can't and the man who thinks he can are both right. Question is, which one are we? Do we believe that we can take that next step? Or is our self-limiting beliefs going to be that roadblock that's actually going to stop us? Do you believe that you were created to thrive, to bless the people around you? Do you believe that you could do more good in this world if you are successful and you are able to bless the people around you? Or are you held back by a feeling of money's evil and I'm going to spend it as fast as I can to get rid of it because I don't want any part in it? It's the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil, but money in and of itself is not. I'm going to have another worksheet, have you guys work on, and give me another 3 to 5-ish minutes, and be as honest with yourself as possible. finish that worksheet. Everybody's close. All right, who's excited to take the next step to that mindset shift? Right, we got one excited, we got a couple excited. All right, so this next part is a little bit interactive. If you're not awake, get some coffee. All right. At some point in time, everybody's got to kind of determine assets and liabilities and where their budget is, right? Kayla talked about it earlier, figuring out where your bottom line is, where you're at. Are you negative? Are you positive? I want to talk a little bit about assets and liabilities. Nothing to do with tax codes, so don't think of that. We're talking about assets that are putting money in your pocket, liabilities that are taking money out of your pocket. All right, so I'm going to refer to that a couple times throughout here. Just remember, assets put money in, liabilities take money out. So if in question and you're like, is this a liability or not? Just there's the litmus test. Does it take money out of my pocket or does it put it in? All right, so I'm going to ask you some items that maybe could be either or I'd like your opinion on it. Is a laptop an asset or a liability?
Depends.
Depends are good diapers for adults, but all right. Is it an asset or a liability? All right, so if it's working for you in a business or it could be an asset. What happens if it's just for your video games and it's kind of a time suck? A liability, a huge liability. Anything with a screen in front of it, warning, disclaimer, is a huge potential for a liability. Time suck, time and money are interchangeable. So if it's soaking up your time, just think of it as soaking up your wealth as well. Just keep that in mind. How about a cell phone? For most people, I would say a massive liability. If you have a business, it may be both, or it may be an asset, depending if you've learned the discipline to not scroll. If you're scrolling, I'm just telling you that may be the single biggest liability in your entire life. It can get expensive. It soaks up your spare time. It soaks up, you can spend that way. You can do all kinds of good and bad on there. How about a Lamborghini sports car?
Liability.
Unless it's a rental, it could be, yes. So if you're renting it out, could be a very good asset. Again, if at the end of the day, your bank account is shrinking because of it, it's taking money out, it's a liability. How about a house?
Your house or rental house?
My house.
Liability,
And I'd love to hear more about it. Why is it a liability?
because you're putting money into it, you're not making it as per rich dad or that.
Okay, I would say after 3 years of ownership, if you're not moving real often, after 3 years of ownership, it becomes an asset because of appreciation. The first 3 years, you're still paying off your realtor fees, it's worked into the debt, but your first 3 years, you're not building any wealth. You're just paying back the loss in that transaction that happened. After about 3 years, it starts becoming an asset. If you are somewhat handy, you can do the repairs, so you can keep up with it, it becomes more of an asset, otherwise it can still be a liability as the expensive bills come in. How about a zero-turn riding mower, kind of has the cup heater on one side and the cooler on the other, so beverage bowl and hot. Is that an asset or a liability? I see a trend here, like, again, it can be used either way. If used properly, it's an asset. If it's just a toy, I'd say it's probably a liability. Unless, I mean, you have a huge farm and it's saving you time, so you're using it for better things, but or your time for better things. How about designer clothing?
Still say both.
If you're a model or if it's necessary for your business, absolutely. How about a vacation home?
Asset. Well, if you're renting it.
Mental asset.
That's important. So if you're renting it and it's bringing in more income than all expenses, it's an asset. But there's plenty of people that have vacation rentals that they're still losing money on, and it could still be a liability, right? So buying a vacation rental and putting it out there on Airbnb doesn't guarantee that it's going to be an asset, right? If you purchased it for too much money or your management costs are too high, it could still be a liability. How about some other ideas? Anybody have any ideas that are questionable asset or liability? Anything? Stump the chump, difficult one?
I do.
Yeah.
PlayStation.
PlayStation. What do you guys think? Sony PlayStation.
YouTube channel?
Yeah.
You got a business? You making money on it?
There's a lot of people that are gamers nowadays.
Yeah.
Some people are making.
Roblox is paying they're paying money.
Nice games.
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the same thing. It's a mindset, right? How are we choosing to utilize? Are we making it a liability or an asset? Almost all these things are fluid, if you notice. Like, very few things that are really cut and dry. This is a liability, this is an asset. Don't be confused though. Liabilities are real and assets are real. Your mindset is the only shift between those things, is how you're handling it.
So do you consider like stuff like insurance, obviously things that you have to pay for?
Insurance is, I would say, necessary to protect your assets. So I would put it in the necessary good liabilities, right? So there are good and bad liabilities. The magazine subscription to somebody that's a fashion designer, that person is having to come up with new fashion. That person doesn't use that magazine to make money, but it's a good liability because it's feeding ideas, right? So some things are just good liabilities. Insurance is one of them. Paying your taxes is another one. Like, the consequences of not having some of those liabilities far outweigh. It becomes a bad liability if you miss it. So how about I think the difficult one. How about food? Food. Yeah, so it can be an asset to keep you healthy, and if you get poor quality food, it can become a liability as well. Or if you're not controlling where you're getting it and what you're buying. Any other difficult assets, liabilities? No. All right, so I think. No, I'm not touching that. I would say asset. I love it. So the trend is, and you hit the nail on the head, is where our mindset goes can determine everything we touch in life can either become asset or liability, depending on what our time allows. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of time to work on another worksheet, and I want you to think about money being a tool. It can take you wherever you want to go, but it can't replace you as the driver. enough time to finish that. Right. So hopefully some of you guys identified some things that you can make a mental shift on. Anybody brave enough to share one? No one? No takers at all?
I have one that could be interesting, hobbies.
Okay.
So I spent about 4 hours last night on a hobby I hadn't spent money on it.
Mhm.
Obviously, time investment. But mentally, it was good. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
like, for me to just take that break and do something with my hands was good.
Yeah.
But this particular hobby, I need to be probably best. Money. So,
Yeah, I think mental health has a value that can't be, you can't put a dollar amount on, but I will say hobbies don't necessarily have to cost you money. And depending on where you're at financially, you need to be wise about your hobbies. If you can afford expensive hobbies because you are already wealthy, good. If that's where you're at, that's fine. But if you're in a spot where you're still working on your budget and having a positive net worth, and it's questionable whether you have net worth or it's negative, challenge those hobbies maybe to be less expensive. In due time, that you can switch hobbies. So taking the time is worth it, but maybe choosing what that is and putting limits on it. Yes.
And you can turn your hobby into an asset. Cause like I crochet, like I read books a lot, so I have like over 200 books, so I wanna write one day, so I can turn it into an asset.
Excellent. Yes, your hobbies can definitely be money makers. Then you're enjoying it, you're getting the time, and you're making money. Anybody that knows me knows that I won't have a hobby if I can't make money. Just, and some of those hobbies don't lend themselves to making money, so I buy and sell products that are involved. So I like flying paramotors. Anybody know what a paramotor is? I think of an engine and a propeller on my back with a little bit of a lightweight cage and a lawn chair that kind of folds out underneath me. A parasail. I go walk into the sky, start my engine and go. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah. Except these guys are just gliding. They don't have an engine. I can go take off. They have to jump off.
Is that you?
No, it's not me.
Okay.
That's just a random stock picture. Yeah, if it was me, you'd see a propeller behind me and a backpack. And that's the equipment is kind of expensive, but I bought this old used equipment, made money, and I think I'm at 10,000 positive for the hobby right now. So, and I do keep track of that because I'm a numbers weirdo like that.
Hey, we're not weird.
We're not weird. It's cool to be. It's cool to be square.
It's cool to know that, it's cool to know your numbers.
Yes. So I look at money like a snowball. It's falling down on everybody. It may not be, you might be under an eve and it might be a little bit less on one area and some areas have less snow than others, but for the most part, it's falling down on everybody and we choose what to do with it, right? You can ball it up and throw it at somebody else and have a snowball fight, right? You can be one of those overachievers and throw it into a snowman. And at first, it's a lot of work packing that ball and trying to get it started. But kind of like a snowman, as it gets bigger under its own weight, it starts growing, right? So if you got the discipline to get past that difficult, uncomfortable part, it gets easier, right? I think finances are a lot like building a snowman. First, it's a little hard, but it gets easier and easier and easier until at some point in time, you roll down a hill and hands off, you're chasing it, it's growing. So it makes it's huge, right? You're not, fall asleep instead of growing, it's rolling down the hill. Other people start out with that same ball, like they're gonna build a snowman, and they bring it in the house and make a snow cone with it. Eat it, yeah, okay, that's what they did with it. Other people hold on to it a little too long when they're walking in there to build a snow cone or whatever. And what happens if you hold on to snow too tightly for too long? It disappears. Money's kind of the same way. If you're tight-fisted and like you hold on to it, you do nothing with it, it has a tendency to just disappear. It kind of dissipate. So using it wisely is key to be able to have it grow. It in of itself, again, it's not going to make its own choices. You have to steer where you're going with it, what you're doing with it. If you have somebody built that budget, like Kayla describes it, you now have some savings. What are you going to do with that? I want to give an example of a financial snowman. I'm going to back up to 2001. I was around 20 years old. Yep, getting old. And I saved up enough money to buy a wrecked sports car. Well, Mazda Miata, it totally enrolled, and I had worked at an auto body shop when I was younger. And so I knew how to do body work. I fixed it up like new and I loved it. It was my little convertible sports car and it was fun and I enjoyed it and had it for a few years. And fast forward a little bit later, I probably had it for about 3 years-ish, I think. And I got married and had a kid. And I wanted to build a house in a nice area where nobody would put a gun to my head and steal my truck. And I grew up in poverty. I'd never lived in a suburb. I didn't really know how to get into that. It was almost unreachable to me. It felt like there were those people and then there was us, right? And like, how do you bridge that gap? I didn't really know. I didn't have a lot of people in my circles that kind of guided me. So I did what I often do is decided I wasn't going to follow the main rules of how everybody else did it. I was going to buy a piece of land in a nice area just to build a house, because why not just build one, right? So I bought a cheap parcel of land in a suburb because it had a good school district and I wanted to make sure my kids had a good school district, our future kids. And I started building the house, but I needed money to build the house and I had savings. I bought the land, like $12,000. This has been a lot. It was cheap. And then I had a hole dug and foundation built, and I was running out of money. And I thought that the banks would just give me draws to build this house, and it'd be no big deal, right? Well, turns out banks aren't that easy with their money. They want to see something there that they can take back if you don't make your payments. They wanted to see something framed under a roof before they give me the first draw. Kind of running out of money. And so I look at my sports car that I have enjoyed for a few years and parted ways with it, sold it, and bought the lumber and shingles to frame my house. So I framed it all in, put a roof on it, went back to the bank. Bank's like, yeah, we'll give you a loan to buy windows, doors, and drywall and mechanicals, and then we'll just keep that process going. So it worked. I finished the house. I had a lot of equity in the house. If you guys are familiar with that term, it means the amount I owed on the house versus what it was worth. There was a spread between that. Okay? And that spread was significant enough to where I was able to get an equity line of credit. Anybody know what an equity line of credit is? Personal credit line based on the value of that house that I didn't own. So there was debt, and then there was another amount that I owned that I didn't have debt on. So I had an open line of credit. I could just write a check for it from that remaining value. I used that money to buy a rental property because the market crashed right around that time. Houses were cheap, really cheap. Anybody remember the financial crisis? Everybody's houses were getting taken. Banks owned countless properties, and if you had cash, or in my case, the ability to write a check from equity line of credit, which is the same as cash, you could buy houses for ridiculously cheap. I bought the house right next to what I had built for about half. Actually, it was a third of what it had sold a few years prior. It needed a lot of work. I had to rebuild it. But I was able to write a check for it and buy it because no bank was going to loan on it based on the condition it was in. I fixed it up, had equity in it because then I didn't have a mortgage on it, right? I just had the equity line of credit that I borrowed from my personal residence to buy it. Now I have a rental property that I don't have any mortgage on, that I was able to get an equity line of credit on to go buy another house, right? It started snowballing. Fast forward, I think maybe 10-ish years, I could look back and I could see that sports car that I gave up. It was fun. It was a liability. I sold it, got the money from that, put it into something that was an asset, building a house that had increasing value, and rolling that equity. If I look back, I gained about $500,000 in net worth in a 10-year time period that I couldn't have done if I didn't give up something that I enjoy, but was a liability, a sports car. Sometimes it takes giving up some comfort. Maybe we like to eat out. Maybe we like to buy clothing. Maybe like if you can't give up something, it's hard to get that next step to grow, right? So I've learned that saying no is just as important as saying yes in your finances. Saying no to little things is imperative to be able to say yes to something bigger. If you have a dream that's big, you've got to be able to say no to all the little things that come along the way, right? Financial success is, I think, more about saying no to the little things than it is about what your plan is on the big side. Many ways to get success in finances, but they all involve no's, the little things that on a daily basis are going to erode your goal and take away from that goal. Can you see success? Can you visually see success? Sometimes, and there's not, sometimes you can see like the after effects of success, but success is kind of hard to see. Like, and a lot of it is a mindset that is sort of invisible. I'm going to show you a picture of Nathan, my son. A couple of you guys may know Nathan. This was on his 16th birthday with his 3-year-old Honda Civic Turbo. When you see this picture, what comes to mind? You can be honest, you won't hurt my feelings. Lucky boy. Privileged, maybe mom and dad bought him a car and making payments.
Kids taking care of it, and he's washing it.
He's responsible for washing the car that we gave him. Maybe must be nice to have a family that take care of it.
My first car didn't look like that.
Right? My first car. Yeah. So let me back up a little bit. 5 years prior to this picture, when he was 10, going on 11, we told him and his sister, who at the time was like 7 or 8, on no uncertain terms, we are not buying you a car. Any car you want, any goal you want, you have to save up for it. All of it. Want a car? Start saving. Now, at his age, that meant when grandma and grandpa gave him a $20 bill, not buying the fidget spinner, right? At 10, smell. But a couple years into it, you realize saving $20 once a year, twice a year for the grandparents isn't going to get him what his dream was. He wanted to buy a car that would be reliable through college, right? Maybe I planned that idea, but either way, he bought in wholeheartedly that he wanted a vehicle that was going to be reliable to get him through college to where he didn't have vehicle issues in the meantime. So he started mowing lawns. He started trapping moles. Believe it or not, he made thousands of dollars trapping moles. And there's good money because people don't like their lawns getting tore up. People will overpay for you to get rid of these pesky critters. In fact, I had somebody contact me on LinkedIn thinking that I was the renowned person with last name Vidor that could get rid of his mole problem. It wasn't me, it was my son, but either way, he got a reputation for being able to get rid of moles, and he made really good money on the side just doing working, right? And saying no to spending that money, because the temptation when you're 13, 14 is you got money in your pocket. The latest Nike outfit is really cool when you're a teenager, or the latest skateboard. But he got really good at saying no to the little things because he had a big goal. And you can keep that in mind. He didn't want to shrink that goal, right? So when we're tempted to spend on the little things that each one of us have our own propensity to burn money on, we've got to ask questions of, is it worth shrinking our larger goal? Is a small thing worth shrinking a larger goal?
I just have to note, because it is my son, his shorts were bought at Goodwill, just saying, because you said Nike, and Q didn't buy those, and we didn't buy expensive Nike clothes, they were actually from Goodwill.
It's fair. Yeah, being wise with our choices. It also meant saying no to time sucks, because your time is your wealth. It's interchangeable. You can't make money if you don't have time. He's had to say no to hanging out with friends sometimes. He's a social guy. He still fits in, did fit in time with his friends, but it had to be less, right? He couldn't spend all his time. He had to say no to leisure. He didn't watch TV at all, at all, growing up. He had to say no to video games because the video games would have sucked his time. Instead of working, he'd have been playing. So he had to be really selective of how he spent his time. So no to spending, no to burning time needlessly. So then by the time he was 15 and a half and got his driver's permit, we bought a wrecked car. It saved up like $10,000. And at the auction we bought at that time was 2.5-year-old Honda Civic, but it was total. So we spent the next 6 months of our spare time between when he got his permit and his driver's license working on rebuilding this, which meant more no's to leisure, friends. Like, it meant he had to sacrifice, right? So that first picture that you saw with him, that might look like success to somebody, but the real success wasn't the car or the end result. It was him learning the process of, if I have a big goal, this is how I get to it. I'm going to say no to the wasteful spending. I'm going to say no to the excess leisure. I'm going to say yes to this bigger goal. And he learned what successful people have learned is success is a accumulation of a whole bunch of small decisions. A lot of them are just self-control based. No, it could be awful. I mean, it's only 2 letters, but it can be really hard. So, would you consider the success being the self-control, perhaps? I think that was the underlying that most kids his age probably would have struggled with. That was probably, and not everybody at a young age maybe even are capable, right? I have a son and a daughter that are both, in my mind, successful and have very different personalities, and they each go about it slightly different. So I'm not saying that everybody has the exact same propensity and abilities. People are dealt different hands in life, right? And people are wired differently from each other. But regardless, a precursor to success is learning to say no to a lot of the little things in life. The next slide, I would love for you guys to give a little thought into. It's uncomfortable, push through it, just do it anyways. And be honest with yourself. So I would like to repeat one of those questions, and I'd love to hear from you guys. If there was ever a good time to make changes that would improve my outcome, when would that be? When would that be?
Nah.
All right, so I would say while your mindset is in a growing, thriving mindset, make these plans, make a game plan to actually succeed. Not that it feels good or is unrealistic, but choose things that you can make improvement on and stick to it. I want to challenge you guys not to think of financial sacrifices as no's. Don't think of those no's as no's. The little things that you got to say no to, think of them as saying yes to a bigger goal. If you don't have a dream, a goal that's bigger, it's going to be a lot harder to say no to the little things. As those things come up, if there's nothing there that's a bigger dream, whether that's a dream of getting out of debt, building wealth, having a secure financial future for your family, if any of those things, if they're not there at all and you don't have that dream, it's going to be really hard to say no to your whatever favorite food and your favorite drink and your favorite that you're consistently burning money on, and looking through your credit card statements of things that you're burning money on. It's going to be a lot harder to say no to those things if you don't have a bigger yes. Does that make sense? There's remarkable parallels in our finances and our faith. And if any of you guys are not Christians, just bear with me. Saying no to sin and our earthly desires, to say yes to a goal of pleasing our Creator and yes to Jesus, kind of a very similar parallel. It's a self-control thing. And if you give up the little things that you got to say no to, then you're free to say yes to something much bigger and better than yourself. Your finances, there's so many parallels in there, and it really does come down to self-discipline. And while that feels and sounds like a negative thing, don't think of the negative side. Just bring yourself back around to thinking of the goal, the bigger yes. It makes it so much easier to be successful in the day-to-day, because really your success is determined by your day-to-day little no's. All those little things add up to be able to empower you to be able to have a much bigger yes. Some next steps that you can take. I have at the end, I will have a QR code that you can scan, 5-question questionnaire about today. At the bottom of that questionnaire will be a link to your next steps financial evaluation. There's no cost whatsoever. I'm not selling anything. I don't have any underlying anything other than to help you succeed. If I spent a couple years developing this, it maps your past behaviors to give you an outcome of your next best steps. I don't have time to meet with everybody individually. It's not what I do, but I have a heart for helping people. So I've spent the time developing this so that it would be like you sitting down and talking to me for a little while. So what I would give you for advice, this will spit out. If you like it, print it or screenshot it, because you can't get it back and you can't save it. Just FYI. So, and please don't share out the QR code. I'm only giving this to these groups when I'm speaking. So next steps that you can take, pair up with somebody. Accountability is powerful. If you have a spending habit that is lifelong, don't fool yourself into thinking that tomorrow it's going to be easy to take that on. But if you have somebody that's holding you accountable that you're meeting with, it makes it a lot easier to stick to a plan, right? Share your game plan. If you're coming up with a plan, share it with somebody that will hold you accountable and not say, yeah, that looks nice, and then never talk about it again. Actually, make an action plan and have somebody hold you accountable. Maybe hire a coach if you need it. Someone like Kayla that can meet with you and go over your finances. Maybe you need that ground level start to get you on the right trajectory for success. If you don't have a foundation, you can't get where you're going to go. I mean, it's imperative to have a strong base understanding of where your finances are going, so that in turn, you can start investing and growing wealth, right? Peter Drucker once said, the best way to predict your future is to create it. It's not going to do it itself. You're going to have to do work, but I can tell you, it's worth it. That QR code, if you scan it, we'll have a short evaluation of me here, and then at the bottom of it, there is a link. You can't get it any other way, and it's gone if you don't scan through here. Go to the bottom, click on that. You're going to need about 15 or 20 minutes. Answer honestly on that blink that you're going through. If you're honest with yourself, it will give you accurate output of next steps for you to take to build wealth and grow. Thanks for your time, guys. I hope you guys are motivated. Yes, you have a question?
Yes, because this is gonna keep me up all night before I can finish up this form.
Uh-oh.
What, so whatever happens to the rental property and up to the.
I sold that property and I bought properties in better parts of town that didn't put me at as high risk. It was good for where I was at when I started, right? It cash flowed. It was on paper, it was good. It just was a higher risk neighborhood that once I had a family, it didn't make sense for me to be there anymore. So I still have rental properties. But I was able to make a transition based on savings that I had earned during that time period to then choose areas that maybe weren't as dense of and I had to start somewhere, right? And it was good for where I was at when I started. But then I had to kind of grow in time. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys.
Thanks for.
Wow, for Kayla and Josh, thank you. You have invested your wisdom into us in this time that we've had today, 3 hours, thank you. And now we all need to use that investment for ourselves, our families, our faith, our kingdom, God's kingdom, and our community. God's counting on all of you to do something with what you've learned here today. So I want to highlight a couple of our upcoming events before we leave. Right here in this room, under the Noble Live workshops, Saturday, September 9th, we'll have Jim McFarland, the Clarity Spiral. This one will be very specific in breaking down your faith, God-honoring practices to clarify who you are and what your purpose is and how to use that to clarify your calling. So very faith-based and spiritual in that, as well as applying that to your business and personal life. And then Saturday, September 30th, Chris Borja's coming back. He's a speaker that is very good friend of Noble's and comes a couple times a year. Very large network of business owners and entrepreneurs, whatever, 10 or 12,000, 15,000 now. But he's going to come and teach us about networking, return on investment, strategies for achieving business results through authentic connections. And so that's something all of us need to do, be better at. And this is just FYI, the next Noble Academy that Chad spoke about earlier today is actually taking place in Pittsburgh in our sister church. I'm looking at Naya, because you know Covenant Church probably very, very well. Her father's the pastor of Covenant Church and here as well. So it's a great relationship as we're growing out of state and out of the country and just beautiful things filling in God's prophetic word for Noble too. And so the online forums in September, Penston Henderson is an active member participant here at Oasis, fantastic motivational speaker, overcoming fear, facing everything right. You're going to really love him if you have that lunchtime slot that you can jump online and participate in that. Believe me, you are going to be inspired and walk away ready to activate your faith. And then September 22nd, we have Jeff Elder, who's right here in the room, going from Sunday worship to Monday business without leaving Christ behind. I'm really looking forward to that one myself, Jeff. Really, really am. Because even as I'm new and starting a business, I'm like, how do I keep my personal finances and business finances or God-sized goals separate but together? We're all, a big part of me is my business and what I do for God too. So God just gonna lead us in some of that. But let me pray over you and send you out, but then I do want you all to come forward, and I'm gonna go back there. We want a group picture before anybody leaves, okay?
Before we go, I do want to make sure that I do show the tutorial that I promised earlier to see what that looks like. If you guys are interested in that, that can be at the very end if you want to stick around.
Yes, and thank you for that, because that also caused me to remind you that the sign up back there, if you want a one-on-one time with Chaz and Rob, sign up back there, and I think a couple of you didn't register. I'm thinking of Sandra, I don't know your name, if you registered, then we have your contact information, but if you didn't register for today, glad you're here, but just see me afterwards, because we want to get your contact information so we can send you the recording and make sure you get the handouts in a digital form and follow up with Noble in future events if you're interested, okay?
Question.
Yeah, Becky.
The Noble live workshops, and then you have the, online ones, the live ones, are they also virtual? Like, is it-
That's this, yes,
Right.
so since you
Also
drive an hour and a
yes.
half, you can get the online link and participate online.
Thank you.
We like in person for sure, but yes, you can also join us. The woman that was on today, one was from the Marysville area and the other one's from Texas.
Oh.
Who was on with us today, so, yeah. Okay, let's pray. Holy God, we know that you are good and you have a good future for each one of our lives. And as unique as you made us, you have a unique plan for each of us. We thank you for Kayla and Josh who are investing it in us, so that we might do more for your kingdom, more for our family and more for the community to the glory of your name. So now send us out, Lord, with an anointing and a purpose and a calling on our lives. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right. So do you want to come up first or can we take the picture first?
Picture.
Let's take the picture first. So then if anybody really needs to skip out, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody stand up front. Crowd in together, close.
I feel like Susie should be in these pictures.
You gotta be in the picture for sure.
No, I said I just feel like Susie should be in these
Oh, okay,
pictures.
one of them, and then I'll jump in the middle like.
Tomorrow I'll
Chris
be
does that, like the selfie where you're. Or whatever. I'll,
Normally it's the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
well, okay, scoot in and together. Maybe in the front, there you go. Getting close, we can have some more front line, there's some little moving up and down, yes, definitely, no, we want you spent time here, we're back.
Just a quick.
Oh,
quick
Kayla's
picture.
good at doing that, okay. Okay, everybody looking smile. I'll get in there too,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Oh, for the arm, you gonna do it?
She's really.
I'll do it.
Yeah, she's good.
I don't want anybody to.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 7, 9.
That was good, it was only 3 seconds on my knees. That was bad.
She's good. Yeah, thank you. Great job. That's awesome. Got a lot of notes. I've already subscribed to you.
Glasses also, because they're like, yeah, and I don't have the.
I am.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
It glares.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I came to operations from Noble.
I know. I'm like,
So I also handle onboarding volunteers for CA. I also handle the Dublin Entrepreneur Center and handle the and there's a couple other little things to my business. It was basically just created to be able to do job, but as but I am working on a future business plan as well. So totally different, so to speak, so. Anyway,
What is?
but
So
I,
to speak.
a total different, like, swim lanes, so to speak. I was in vocational ministry. So on staff at my church, or director of discipleship, so I built small groups, Bible studies, equipping people, training them to lead in God's word, and startup ministries within the church. So I had done that for the last 13 years, and really my early, I don't want to say childhood, but young adulthood, which was when my own business. And I felt like God had called me to the church to do that and learn and grow first. And I really felt Him calling me out to the business
but still that same kingdom, I don't know if the mindset, but it was actually through my daughter that I met Chaz. So I resigned and stepped away from the church, not really knowing what I was gonna do. But, anyway, with my daughter I met Chaz, and it was a really good fit. So I'm still on a journey. There's still goals out there in the future that are.
I wish, the theater also sounds very nice.
Well, it's hard. So I was a stay-at-home mom when my kids were young. So we lived on. But very little things. So what I feel like is when all my friends are starting to retire, I'm just getting started. Like I'm over here for decades. So, it's. Yeah. Right, but I wouldn't, I'm glad I did what I did when I did. And,
for you. Over there,
you are just a prayer warrior, I think.
I wanna share-
appreciate that. And I love disciple makers, because that's your whole life. And that's my.
Why is this not?
She was gone, so I'm like,
That's not your screen. Oh, okay. Oh.
No, that's not.
I think it was the first.
It looks the same stuff. So where is your,
It's literally just. Yes.
That's so, a long time ago.
is it this?
At my studio,
It's interesting.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, how funny. That's awesome. It's great to see, how it turned out. All right, let me read Oh, well, that's it. You too. I'm gonna text you first.
I don't know, I always.
All right, so maybe I'll just show where.
I know, I did that, but I referenced it to you. Remember that was the spot?
Yeah.
I was like, and then I had to go, I got my little, started my job.
It's not showing.
I really like that.
Hey, Josh, I'm sorry, could you help me for a second?
It was from, and the kids were so young.
I just want to let you guys see.
Oh, that's what it was.
All right. So, yep, go ahead.
Oh, so
That's it.
that's why. And then what's your name?
That is not me. All right, check this out. Yeah, it's weird. That is my screen, like, when I'm at home or something.
Probably the desktop, you go to second monitor, sometimes it will.
Recognize it as a second one.
What is close? I'm gonna see it on the list.
Yeah, so.
We are not.
Did I actually?
Oh, no.
Was there additional? Okay, so.
I just want to make sure.
I did it. They were in church then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same with all of them.
Are they the same? All right.
Your presentation was, it was very challenging, very good.
Is there anything that, anything that's stuck?
What am I gonna do? See, I was my house.
Sorry, I'm trying to close that. Hearing about your daughter, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, so I wanna get your attention. Anyone who was interested in learning a little bit more about the 6 steps to a committed budget, the digital Excel workbook, I want to show you and sort of walk you through what that looks like. It's only $27, it's 50% off until the end of this month, so that's actually a great value to take advantage of it. So let me jump over here to. So when you open it up, you're gonna see this instructions. It's gonna tell you exactly what it is you're gonna walk through. Here is where you actually create your budget. You'll see that the information in the green is where you actually fill in your budgeting information. I'm gonna zoom out here just 1 second, okay? Here is where you start with your step number 1, right? And then here we do our step number 2, which is where we have our cash flow. And it automatically calculates. See how we change the numbers and it calculates? So it tells you your monthly income is at $7,000 from up here. Your total monthly expenses automatically comes to this area from all of your expenses up here, okay? So this top line is your past cash flow. This is where you go back and you look and see what has my money been doing, how has it been flowing. You have had a total monthly expenses of the 4,200. And again, I'm just playing around with these numbers, guys. You type in your income, it'll see this is how much you have left over. After that, again, you're really just plugging in those numbers. Step 4, this is where you come down here and you actually create your next month's budget. So you can actually compare your previous month to the next month. And the totals are right here at the very top. As you're typing in the information, so we have housing, rent, renter's insurance, right? Housing supplies, these are our categories up top. And you see there's a chart down here that shows you your actual cash flow, which is your past cash from the very top one. And this is your budget. This is what your budget looks like that you just created here at the bottom. It just gives you a visual of that, right? So as you type in your information here, just sort of show you, it actually filters over to a printable budget that you can have. So you don't have to do absolutely anything on this particular sheet. And it'll bring all of your information over into the budgeting categories. So you literally print this off and it tells you how much your monthly expenses for your total budget is. And this is in a printable format. If you're familiar with Excel, you can't just print easily, right? But I do have these formatted so that you can print very easily. I'm gonna go back to this over here, show you this last couple of things here. It also has the debt commitment where you type in your debt amounts, the balance, minimum payments. It totals how much your total your total debt commitment is, how much you pay every month. Your total debt, how much all of your debt is. This is where you filter in your debt commitment. Remember we talked about that? You determine how much you can commit to debt based off how much cash flow you have left over. And so once you type in this debt commitment, it'll tell you your new monthly commitment to your debts is the $480 you were already paying. That $150 as well. Now you're paying $630 each month towards your debt and you're getting it paid off fast. And you're going to take this $150 and apply it to the next debt, once they're paid off. Over here is where we have our commitment to savings, where you type in your savings information, your amount, how many months to save. This is how much you would need to save each month for all of your savings goals. I got you. I saw you. Yeah. And so when you come down here, let's say that you decide that you are going to commit $250, right? This just gives you an idea. If you want to save for everything, you're going to have to do this much each month. You can't do that. But we're going to do what we can. So it's just going to be the $250. Well, I want to show you here that once you make those commitments, it automatically comes back over here into your budget. So where your debt commitment comes over, that's the $150, it's an expense now. Your savings commitment comes over to $50, it's an expense now, right? And so just for those additional sheets, there's a bill pay schedule. This is actually something that I use every single month when I was saving up that $10,000 and paying off debt. There's just a couple more. There's annual planning. Again, these are pre-calculated. So I just had a little formula in there. You can type it in. It's automatically calculating what it is for you. Then we have our planning ahead. This is where you plan ahead for all of your expenses. And this is just, for the month, throughout the year. Planned expenses are, what your income is. This is just, you have an overview of what your financial picture looks like so that you're just staying on top of your money management and you're aware of what's going on. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to just share this with you. In addition with this, like I said, you do get the workbook. If you're not a digital person and you want to do it all on paper, that's what the workbook is for. But this is what you will get for that $27 or 50% off. You guys have any questions about that? You're welcome. Everything